Eu vou agradecer em nome de todo mundo, não só isso está acontecendo, porque já tem bastante tempo que, inclusive, a gente tenta fazer isso acontecer. O Ellis vem aqui para o Brasil, mas a gente já tentou muito e nunca conseguiu, então tem que parabenizar o pessoal do ID por esse evento e por a gente estar aqui, né? Somos poucos, mas somos privilegiados. E acho que vocês já devem ter pesquisado o mínimo, porque se vocês estão aqui, vocês devem saber quem ele é de verdade, né? Então, é o cara que efetivamente criou o termo e criou a dinâmica por trás de tudo que a gente faz, né? Então, a gente só tem a nossa empresa por causa do Chan, a gente só faz o que a gente faz por causa do Chan, eu só administro aquela comunidade lá no Facebook por causa do Chan. Então, é um super prazer estar aqui e passar a palavra para o Chan, porque agora eu vou também parar um pouco e aprender como vocês o que ele vai trazer de bacana aqui para a gente. So, Chan, it's your time now. Go for it.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about growth hacking today, and what I'll cover, here's an overall agenda, but there's a lot to pack in. What we're going to do is the first thing that we're going to go through is really looking at a framework for growth, and it really helps, I think, everyone to understand where they are in that framework, what they should be focused on, but with an end goal in mind of how do you get a big company, even if you're small today, the goal is to be big later. So how do you get a big company working together to effectively drive growth? So we'll first go through that framework, and then we're going to reference it a lot through the day, because each section that we go in, these other sections will be covering a part of that framework. So the next area that we'll look at is how you can get a team and really a whole company aligned and working together to drive growth. And obviously, it's much more powerful when everyone's working to drive growth than when only one person or even a small team. But when you get everyone pulling in the same direction, that's really powerful. So we'll look at how some other companies are doing that, and I'll make some suggestions for you there. Then we'll take a break, and then we're going to start to go into just testing and how do you build the habit of testing to really accelerate growth. And so that's part of the framework, but there's some things that need to happen first before the testing really matters. So that's why we cover some other things before we get into testing, but that's really growth hacking is really all about testing to figure out new and better ways to drive growth. And so that's where we borrow a lot from kind of an agile Scrum method on the engineering and product side, but to ultimately learn and find new effective ways to grow the business. So that's where we'll look at what does the team look like that does that, what does the process look like, and then we'll get into some specific areas of where can you focus that energy to drive growth. So first we'll look at really across that customer journey. So the challenge is that in most companies you have a marketing team that maybe does some advertising, a product team that's building product, maybe a sales team if it's B2B, support, but ultimately each of these groups and each of the steps in the customer journey represent opportunities to accelerate growth. And so we'll be looking at really holistically each of those opportunities, and then we'll go into some specifics. So we'll start with retention and activation. If you can't take a new customer and get them to a good experience with your product and retain that customer, growth is impossible long term. So that's where we start. Everyone wants to talk about acquisition, which is the fun, exciting part that marketers usually do. We'll spend some time on that, but obviously we could spend many days talking about acquisition. So we'll get into the tactics, but more important for today, I want you to be able to have a process and a framework and how you can get a team working together to figure out the tactics for driving growth in your business. And so we could look at a lot of tactics, but more importantly, I want you to be able to understand how do you explore those tactics after this and effectively drive growth. And so the last part is how do we bring this all together? The fastest growing companies, it's kind of a complex process where a lot of moving parts are working together to drive growth. In the best companies, the CEO is playing a big role in getting those parts to move together, because sometimes the teams don't want to work together. So yeah, some of these companies, probably I would say one of the hardest parts if you're a big company is getting teams that aren't used to working together to start to work together in a way where they're pulling in the same direction. And so we really end with how do you get these different teams building this habit, working together to drive growth, and then I'll talk about some of the big challenges and what causes teams to fail. And so that's a lot in 4 hours, but I think it'll be worth it. And I think ultimately we're just talking today. I have a couple of questions before we get going. Are there any people here where there's more than one person from the company? Or is it all, okay, good. So we've got one group that's got more than one person. Are you guys all in the same company? Okay. And you have a couple there too? Okay. So some of the exercises, what I want to do, it will get very boring if you listen just to me for 4 hours. So there's some exercises that we have in each of these sections. And but if you're just by yourself, then instead of discussing, just think through and have a pen and paper ready to kind of write your thoughts around some areas. But if there's more than one of you with the company, it's a good opportunity to talk through that growth is really a team effort. And in best scenario, you have multiple team members here. But if not, hopefully, I know it is being recorded, so hopefully it will be available for some of your team members to watch as well, so that you can start to work together and pull in the same direction. So let's get started with the first section. And if you don't understand something, let's keep it interactive. So just raise your hand if you want me to explain more or something's confusing, and we'll have some fun.